Welcome to the No Show, the last show of the year. My name's Andrea Edwards.
And my name is Joe Augustine. This, by the way, is the biggest show of the year, not only in terms of what we're going to cover, because we're doing a roundup of the year. There's been so much that has happened in the year. And also because we have, instead of one guest, we have two guests, always looking to expand our points of view on whatever it is we're talking about. So this time we have a husband and wife team. And if I can add actually a super team, because I've seen them at work and the way things get done in their practice and in the speaking that they do as well. Would you please welcome to the show? I'm going to get them to introduce themselves more as well. So it's Dr. Ye Weng Chiu and Louisa Lee. You figure out who's the husband and who's the wife.
Nice.
Hi everyone, thanks for having us on the show. Hi Andrea, hi Joe.
Hello.
Hey guys, happy to have you both here.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's do the quick introduction. As in, like, if you meet someone at the party and we don't know who you are, what's the quick 30 seconds introduction?
Let me go first. So I'm Louisa, and apart from being the managing director of DP Dental, I'm also the CEO of DP Healthverse, and it's a holding company that we have actually created an ecosystem for that not just houses our dental practice, but we also have a wellness arm, we have a academy and a channel partnership arm. Really, we are here to change the way healthcare is in its current sick care model, and we really wish to shift it to true healthcare and make the invisible visible. So I shall leave Weng Chiu to explain the rest about DP Dental. Yeah.
So I'm a general dentist for the past 23 years, but also manage craniofacial pain, and also I'm a sleep dentist. So, but I think most important is that air is most important to keeping us alive, and we are here to optimize that whole intake of air and optimizing health. So I'm a tongue dentist, putting a lot of focus, gave a TEDx talk on it almost 5 years ago, still a very strong advocate of it.
That's awesome. I love that combination and the fact that it's moving into different territories. It's funny, my 6-year-old son was diagnosed by a dentist having sleep issues, which were linked to his tonsils. And the older son, his issues with his tonsils wasn't picked up by a dentist; it was picked up by somebody else. But dentists are really switched on to some of the bigger issues that are impacting children, and I'm really happy to hear that there's big changes rather than just doing the work. Right, it's looking at the whole patient. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think the habit is most important. So we look at it from the early stage and have the opportunity to even manage babies. Youngest patient was just 4 days old. So we're looking at all the reflexes like suck, swallow, breathe. And then as they grow, we look at all the habits, whether they are mouth breathing or not. And then when we look at the growth and development of the jaw, alignment of teeth, it's an indicator whether the craniofacial or the teeth, the jaw, the whole head and neck area is developing to the fullest of dimension. So if it's not, then there must be some reason. So we go to the root cause, work with a whole community of physicians and allied health practitioners so that we can then try to resolve the issue right at the nip of the problem.
Yeah. And honestly, for any parents out there, especially with young babies, this is something to be paying attention to, because we've gone through years and years and years of hell because we didn't get that. We didn't get that service from the healthcare providers that we were working with. So super important. So
actually,
good for you guys.
The oral systemic link has always been established, but the dental and medical faculty is still separate faculties in the university. So I think what we really need to push through, right, is this integrated approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's the bonus that those of you who joined us early on the show get. You get you get to step into an area that you probably haven't stepped into before. And if you want to find out more, of course, you can look up Louisa and Dr. Ye online as well. So we've got to get down to talking about the news and what's happened in 2023. Big show, and we're looking forward to your points of view as well, Weng Chiu and Louisa. So. I'm going to hand back the steering wheel to Andrea, who's done a lot of work on this particular episode.
Yeah, I kind of got a bit overexcited, didn't I? But if you're going to go back through the year, you've really got to go back through the year, and I can just go back through my weekend reads and just sort of get the summary of what's been going on. And a lot of the titles were heat. So
Yeah.
hot weather was obviously a big issue this year. But just to take everyone back, because sometimes there's so much going on in the news. Some of the things that I saw, I went, oh, that happened this year. I thought it was like 10 years ago. But this was 2023 was the year of spy balloons. Prince Harry's book Spare was launched, and the discussion around his todger, which is the word that everyone's using, was happening. We had Jeremy Reiner's slow plow accident. God, I can't say that. Barbenheimer as a word. Nepo babies became a thing. That's one of those things that I thought had been around a lot longer. And we had the lovely Kylie Jenner wearing the head of a lion as a fashion statement, which was rather thoughtless considering the times we're in. UFOs have officially moved into official circles. We had Gwyneth Paltrow's ski trial, Donald Trump's mugshot, Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner split up and all the shenanigans that went with that. The Beckhams, Arnie, Sly and Robbie, and many, many other documentaries. And the Doomsday Clock was reset to 90 seconds until midnight. And that's the closest it's ever been since it was established in 1947. It was changed mainly due to the Ukraine war, but with obviously what's going on in the Middle East, maybe it'll be changed again. So that's some of the wrap up of everything that I was looking for. But the word of the year is Riz. Now, this is interesting because I had never heard the word, but it refers to a person's ability to attract a romantic partner through style, charm, or attractiveness. So how does everyone think their Riz is?
I left mine behind in the 90s.
I have to share this story of how I got attracted to Wing Chu. So we have been together for more than 30 years. We met as classmates in junior college, and his hair definitely 10 upon 10 Riz.
All right, so he's
because
nice.
He was the only guy in my class that had curly hair when everybody had straight hair, and I thought that was like, wow,
And I didn't film it.
That's different.
It's just genetics, and I got caught by my primary school principal and secondary principal that I have to go to the office to explain why my hair is curly.
Yeah, right.
And that he didn't permit on purpose.
when you live in a culture where curly hair is not so common, right? But anyway, so good to know he's got some Riz. Some of the other words that were contenders include situationship. I'm amazed by how few of these I know, by the way. Beige flag.
What's that?
No idea. De-influencing, which I thought is a good one because that's where the influencers are basically encouraging people not to buy so much stuff. Parasocial, heat dome, we know what those are, and prompt. But of course, Swifty was also another potential in the mix. So, but de-influencing, I was happy to see that in the mix. But yeah, word of the year.
Wow.
There's also a color of the year, which I didn't share with you guys because I found it last night. Pan's color of the year for 2024 is peach fuzz.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, so if you're decorating your home and you want to be on trend, peach fuzz. But of course, the big one is Taylor Swift is Time's Person of the Year, which is attracting some extremely interesting conversations. So what are your thoughts on Taylor Swift becoming Person of the Year?
Well, I think what happens is we tend to take our interpretations of what Person of the Year means, and then we say, "Oh, you got it all wrong." So we don't spend any time to figure out what Person of the Year for Time magazine is, and Time magazine's Person of the Year is about the person, or sometimes thing, that has had the most influence on humanity during the year gone by, and so. In that way, Taylor Swift qualifies because she has been such an important, I won't say important part, but such a significant part of the way the world turns. I mean, she's got, first of all, that huge fan base, and what Taylor Swift begins to think about, begins to worry about, actually does influence a larger population as well. And I think in very real terms, an economic powerhouse, because her tours were released, tickets were released, and the size of that particular economic activity, never mind the concert itself, but just the economic activity around the release of her tickets, says that yep, she's someone definitely to qualify in that list. I'm sure there were many others who qualified on that list as well. I'm sure AI was considered as a person of the year as well. But it looks like Taylor Swift looks like the most human version of what we can get in that particular category this year.
Yeah,
but I think
and her concerts have caused seismic activity as well. They're so huge. So
really, for me, is that I just chanced upon her short history. It's just that I think she represents the female power and also, ironically, the word underdog. Yeah. So she was starting with country music, but then later on, she really was play out, and then she has to change her image, and then went for the more, like say, sexy and also funky. But then Kanye West actually discredited her, even though she won an award, and later the company actually bought over the rights of all her songs. And in order to just re-emerge, she repackaged and recorded, and then now you have the live version, which is doing better than her original version. And she trumps that kind of oppressing power, and then emerge a real champion. Yeah, that's what she's about.
Yeah, nice, Louisa.
I really don't know much about her. Except that I hear that lots of people were queuing up a long time, waiting for the men to walk across the screen, right, to get their chance to buy their tickets. So, like Joe says, her power of influence is definitely there with the younger generation. And so, if somehow we can harness that power and get her to de-influence, right, people into, doing some right things, then that will be something to reckon with. Yes.
Yeah. So I want to take the conversation to a deeper level, because this girl power comment. So I am not a Swiftie as far as the music goes. It's just not in my attention. My boys are heavy metal rock fans, so anytime I get to listen to music, usually with them in the car, that's what I'm listening to, Megadeth or Metallica or something, right? So she hasn't crossed my path musically, but I've been watching her ever since that Kanye West example that you were talking about happened. And I find her one of the most intelligent and creative people. I think, she's been compared to Michael Jackson from a talent perspective, right? I'm constantly seeing men, usually men, mocking her. And what they're actually doing is mocking her fans as well. And it's like it doesn't matter what she does, she doesn't get any credit. So for me, this is the time the world's finally giving her the credit that's due. Mm-hmm. But there's been criticism of her after the concert in Brazil where one of the fans died of heat stroke. She's always there for the fans. That's the connection for her. It's always her priority. And a lot of the climate activists have been saying to her, you've got to get involved in this. You've got to get involved in you've got so much power. But what everyone seems to be missing is what she's doing is empowering generations of young women, not just girls, young women, because she's been around for a long time. Yep. The female power that she is like, so the women in the audience and the girls in the audience are listening to her lessons and what she's learned and how she's moved on, and they're applying it to themselves. So I actually think she's creating more change in the world. And of course, women power and girl power can be a bit obnoxious. We know that. But as a general rule, I actually think she's creating probably the biggest social change in the world. Probably Oprah Winfrey is probably the only other person that's created that level of change. So I think she's incredible. If you actually listen to her speeches, listen to her on chat shows, she's incredibly intelligent. She's also very kind. She's always got a compliment. So, I'm happy. Like, sure, it should have been a climate activist or the climate scientists who've been dealing with a lot of crap, but we can't underestimate her. And that's what I really want to encourage everyone to look at her with new eyes.
Well, if I can be the only one here to say something bad about her, I mean, she's, to my mind, she's someone who has mastered an art, and it's the art of manipulation, and through service and through fan service and what have you. And I don't say that anything that you said is untrue, but I'm also saying that it's a kind of manufactured niceness, manufactured behavior. It is understanding the art of what a human being is and really employing it at the highest level. because if you the little cracks that come through, and you realize that, you know what, people have to be balanced people, right? I mean, so you when you do that much and that often and that nice, I know this sounds very cynical. It sounds like what people say about Bill Gates, but there is this thing as a performer. Your job is to impact the person, impact the audience in a certain emotional way. And she does that. So this whole thing about moving from country to pop and all that, none of that is because she had to. It's because she intentionally took her career and the path and she moved it in that direction, and she's pulling the audience along with her as well. So there's definitely a lot of good that can come out of it. I'm just not about to make her a saint.
No one's a saint, right? but I think, give her more credit than what you're reading out there. And I think Time magazine, both the article on her as well as why they chose her, I think they're both very enlightening.
I think sometimes, she's
definitely got the art. She's got the art down.
It's the Bollywood moment, right? It's like the world is crazy enough already that we need just that, respite from this, and then just go in and then just enjoy that moment, because we know that when we wake up from our dream, the reality sucks. So
well, there was a story just from the other day that I just heard about, the day of 9/11, and there was a CEO of a company that said basically he hired a mariachi band to come to their event that happened to be on the night of 9/11, and he said, just play, we need something.
Yeah, that was a weird night. All right, famous deaths. So Lisa Marie Presley died. Barry Humphries, the Australian comedian. Jerry Springer, I didn't actually know he died. So he, I don't think, has contributed a lot to humanity. Tina Turner, fabulous. Tony Bennett, Sinead O'Connor, which is very sad. Michael Parkinson, I've always been a fan. Matthew Perry of Friends fame, probably the biggest death that was reported this year. And of course, Shane McGowan of the Pogues and Henry Kissinger finally kicked the bucket at 100. So what was the famous death that got your attention?
So I did my homework here.
Yep, go ahead.
So sorry, Joe, but a
girl that's done her homework always gets to walk ahead of me.
But I thought what was really lacking in that list is Asian faces or Asian names, and I looked it up, and I think one person that I think is worth mentioning is Sim Wong Hoo. He started creative, right, and he's really our pioneer tech titan. And he left in January this year, and I think the amount of the achievement that he's made, right, being the first in Singaporean country to be listed in Silicon Valley, if I'm not wrong, too. And he's done a lot in terms of raising Singapore's profile in the tech scene, and some of his inventions were really phenomenal. So I think he's definitely missed. And Charlie Munger at 99, Warren Buffett's right-hand man. I think, to me, Warren Buffett's the one who's getting all the limelight, most of the limelight. But to me, sometimes this is where how Wing Chun and I practice couple entrepreneurship, right? We have our strengths and we cover each other's weaknesses. I think Charlie does that for Warren, and I think he's definitely also worth a mention for being that long-term partner, right, and right-hand man in bringing Berkshire Hathaway to where it is today. That's my homework done.
Cool. Anyone else?
Well, I was just struck at how quick people were to jump on Henry Kissinger, and I realize there's good reason for it. But at the same time, I think there is a body of work, and there's lots of thinking which makes it very difficult, especially around this time, especially with the whole situation in Israel, for instance. It's just this idea of having to make judgments about evil. What is a more evil thing when I think that the phrase that I've been having to work with the last few weeks has been when you are merciful to the evil, evil gets to be or evil. Something else I forget now. It's when you are merciful to the evil, evil gets to be evil to the merciful. That's the kind of challenge that comes up of it. And I know Henry Kissinger wasn't involved in a lot of these kinds of things, especially with especially the military actions and stuff like that. And we were just talking about things like what happened in Vietnam, right? The idea that it was a political situation. America had to pull out of the whole thing, and in a sense, people said, "Oh yes, we win because there's peace." Well, what was the price of that really, in terms of what else happened? Because nothing was stopping whatever we thought was evil, or at least in the minds of whoever it's looking. There were lots of people who suffered evil because there was no one to stop it as well.
Yeah.
I think that itself sums it up the whole century, I would say, the whole 100 years that it's about. Because now we come to a point where we know who is making the judgment for the world is uncomfortable, right? Because you can see the instability that's happening from Asia to Russia to the Middle East, even at home of the own North America. A certain big country is actually making all the decision. So I would say, I think the world has come to a realization, and we are equilibrating some of that power. And I hope that it will be a fairer system going forward.
Yeah. All right. Who would you give Stupidest Person of the Year award to?
Well, I know the temptation is to go with Elon Musk, but I think Boris Johnson has really put down enough runs to prove that he has a lead on Elon Musk. One thing is because Elon's still doing things to get out of where he is, and he's moving forward, and the story never ends, I think, for Elon in terms of developing and moving forward in business. Boris Johnson, so the more and more you hear about what happened, especially during COVID. So you've heard some news about where he's had to, I'm not sure whether he's had to yet, but the headline I read was that he was going to have to apologize for COVID. And we found out things like, well, first of all, he didn't know how to, this is the claim, right? He didn't know how to read graphs, didn't understand graphs. And you imagine, hang on, Prime Minister graphs. They're not separate universes, but apparently to him it was. So all the transgressions, if you want to put it down to one thing, was just how uninformed and stupid it was. So that kind of power with stupidity, I think that's the amplifying factor. So it's stupidity to the power to the power of power. And so he scores higher than Elon Musk on my list.
Yeah. I've got a group of people on my list.
Okay.
The board members of OpenAI, who actually made the hasty decision to oust Sam Altman, and then having to reinstate him 4 days later because the employees were threatening mass resignation. Yeah, so that's top on my list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then I can't choose one, but sometimes I have to choose many, because I think people are getting stupid in how they choose leaders nowadays. Unfortunately, so to me, it's that the vote is not cast in the right direction to choose someone that can actually lead the world into a better place. But now you can see many leaders around the world making decisions that is actually, making the 90 seconds shorter. So I think many deserve the award. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. I'd add Rishi Sunak to the list as well as the most detached from reality Prime Minister I think I've ever seen. And I gave him a go. Anyway, so time to get a little bit more serious. So 2023 kicked off with the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report. And they basically said that we are now in the era of the polycrisis. So if you don't know, the polycrisis is the simultaneous occurrence of several catastrophic events all happening at the same time. So we can all see it. So just so you know what it includes, and there's lots of things that you can put within the context of it, but inflation, cost of living crisis, trade wars, capital outflows from emerging markets, widespread social unrest, which we're seeing everywhere, geopolitical confrontation and the spectra of nuclear war. But some of the newer things that have been added to the polycrisis are unsustainable levels of debt, a new era of low growth, low global investment and deglobalization, a decline in human development after decades of progress, rapid and unconstrained development of dual use, which is civilian and military technologies, and the growing pressure of climate change impacts and ambitions in an ever-shrinking window for a transition to a 1.5 degrees C world, which is everybody who's paying attention knows that window has been firmly shut. So this has been a tough year because of that. At the beginning of the year, the polycrisis as a term wasn't really being talked about too much, but by the end of the year, more and more people are talking about it. Were you all aware of the concept of the polycrisis?
Well, not the term itself, but if you know when we talk about it, is as you were talking about it up until a certain point, it just sounded like the 70s, right? I mean, that's what I take from it. We go through crises, we go through situations where things are really tough, inflation is bad, and everything is, and the world as we know it then is about to end. But then now we have a few more things to add on top of that. So in a sense, I think what happens is with modernity and with more things happening at the same time, we also have more things to go wrong. Like someone was talking to me about trying to expand the way I do my business, for instance, right? Do this and do that, whatever it is, and hire more people. And I thought about it this way. I said, it's basically for me an opportunity for more things to go wrong. And I think the world is in that kind of situation right now. So many things are linked to our behavior and stuff like that, that we really have more and more ways to screw it up. And we seem to have our hands more on the wheel of all these things going down. But, we've also faced, this is the worst it's been. But I think the polycrisis is not a new concept. As I said, it sounded like the 70s that when you were talking about it halfway through.
Yeah, but it's the layer of the climate and biodiversity and everything else on top of it that really makes it a much more serious time. The decade of disruption, that's being predicted. And I mean, it's obviously beyond the decade, but yeah. You guys, any thoughts?
I mean, we're lucky. I think we're born in that era that where in Singapore especially we are taken care of. Our parents work hard, but they provided for us, and it's just that now that we have been also quite economically provided for the last few years, and then now we are facing this whole big change in the whole how the world is being operated, and again. Being cliche is like crisis is always opportunities as well. I can't predict how much more my life is going to last, but I know that what I can do today. So that's why we're still very active in trying to just establish what we can do, not knowing how long more. But if we can make that impact now, we can. It's just like that how Loki is trying to do, right? The timeline thing. Right, so if you do something now, you might have impacted the timeline, and it will turn another direction. So why worry about future when you can do more at the moment?
Right, we should spend a moment to make sure everyone understands we're talking about the Marvel character Loki, the brother of Thor in the story that's on Disney Plus.
And the multiple and the multiple timelines.
Yeah.
I think for me it's that this is the reason why I stopped reading the papers. I just find generally news can be quite depressing, and for me on my list of strengths, actually hope is number one. Very high up there, and I think we need that, right? Because otherwise it can be very, very depressing. And like Wing Chu says, focusing on what we can do, right? And that's what we want to do. And for us, it's really focusing on educating people in the healthcare area, that actually they can be their own best healers, right? And educating the young people, perhaps, the reason why we even set up HealthVerse, is actually not inspired by Metaverse, but we can see the future, one where young people are more and more going to be sucked into the metaverse, and then what, right? So we were inspired by Iceland verse, where we want to bring people back to awareness of nature, of what is still beautiful and still available right now, right? And appreciating ourselves, our own health at this moment, and being proactive in all these things. Focusing on what we can do, right? And
we did something. We went through an arduous process, and to celebrate, we are B Corp certified. So
good for you. That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, the other opportunity you guys have obviously got is all of these billionaire bunkers that are being built all over the world. One of the professions that they're going to need to recruit is dentists. So you never know, you might have a chance to go and live in one of them. Okay, so Israel, Palestine, Hamas. We've talked about it a lot on the No Show. Since October the 7th, which feels like such a short time ago and such a long time ago when it first started, but this week, we're finally starting to see more reports coming out of the violence that was perpetrated on the women who were raped and brutally mutilated in Israel by Hamas, and that's a very important part of the situation, because it hasn't been getting the credit, including from the women's groups like UN Women. So that's created a lot of problems and issues. But on the other side, of course, that we had a truce, which I think we're all just holding our breaths, hoping it would last, and it didn't, which has forced the head of the Red Cross to speak out about the brutality and the suffering of the Palestinians, and she doesn't do that very often. And, of course, the other thing that happened this week is the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres used a rarely executed power, which is urging the members of the UN Security Council to demand an immediate humanitarian ceasefire as the conflict in Gaza continues. So this is called Article 99, and it allows the Secretary General to inform the Security Council of matters they believe threaten international peace and security. So nearly 16,000 Palestinians have died so far, and it's probably more, because I got that number yesterday. So we need peace. It's time. Any thoughts, guys, on what's going on over there?
Question: why do we need Article 99? So the point is that, right, the whole UN sits, and all the conversation that went past, why did they can force a ceasefire, right? You can see that some world power continue to even though on one side saying please stop, you're killing more than you should, and then at the other end they're still shipping weapons. They're still supplying Israel for more war. So why is that happening? And why is the rest of the world not able to stand against them, right, and stop this? When a small country can do, will be stopped long time ago, when certain countries don't and won't, right? So that's my question. I cannot comprehend that. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Netanyahu is obviously being held up in power by the extreme far right, and they're absolutely pushing for total annihilation of the Palestine area where Hamas is. So that's not helping. But we can see the ramifications that it's having on politicians around the world. I mean, there's a huge movement in the US that are saying they won't vote for Biden because of what's going on, and because of the support. So the ramifications are just huge. So getting this under control as quickly as possible, it's so important, because you can't, I've been listening to military specialists saying there's no one can win this war. It's an impossible war. So what's the solution? It's not to continue killing women and children and elderly people, right? So it's a tough one. It's very tough.
Well, most people don't look at what's happening in this war as actually being a chess move, by Hamas, to the extent that it is. I mean, if you think about what was happening before the 7th of October, it wasn't like nothing was happening. There was everything that up to that point that would make it likely that Hamas would take some sort of action, some sort of military action, into Israel. That was always the case. People always, like, because of the feeling of oppression and the occupation basically of the people, right? So the context of the big answer to the question is why does it happen this way? It's because of what actually happened on October 7th. So if you look at the stuff that happened, it's the unspeakable stuff that happened that really is what pushed what would normally be just another equal response. Like in terms of what the normal life is in Israel, for instance, is if there's a rocket attack, there'll be a few rockets going back and destroying some kind of military thing, and that's it. That's the equal and opposite kind of response. But when you have this sort of really unspeakable thing done to you intentionally, this is that changes the nature of what's being done. It's not like that. There is a difference in terms of trying to eradicate militant, the military on the other side, and another side using civilians as a reason why you should not attack me. After we've done that thing to you. So it's not like they've called them a name and run back across the border, and then the rockets come back, and that's what happened. It's you've done these horrible things that I mean, this is what we the word unspeakable is used to describe this kind of situation. It's really, I can't even bring myself to say the things that have happened. And if you have that happen to you as an intentional act of provocation, Israel's been provoked. And the thing is, this chess move goes beyond that. It's around the world. It's because it can't be won anywhere else. That's why it's unwinnable, and that's why Hamas will prevail in a sense, because Israel cannot go through what it needs to do go through with, which is basically to try and eradicate Hamas, because they're so embedded in the rest of the population as well. So it's really an impossible thing, and the echoes of Vietnam have to be recognized in this as well. That it is a strategic move to make it impossible for Western civilization to really stay with Israel as friends. It is predictable. I mean, if you ask me, if I did that, what would I expect from Israel? We would expect this. We just know that this is the kind of response that's going to happen. And so when the way I look at it is this: if we see someone walk into a bear compound in the zoo and poke the bear, we kind of know what is going to happen in response to that. Yeah. And that's what's happening. And it's tactical though, because what's happening now is people are also filming that to make sure to say, okay, I'm going to poke the bear. And then people are using this footage and the story and whatever it is to say the bear is dangerous. And that's the kind of game that is going on, which is a very unfortunate thing, because the people that are being used in this particular game are real life human beings, the civilians, the children. A fact is, for instance, like in Palestine or the Gaza Strip anyway, the population by its makeup is more than 50% children. So there's no way any kind of response happening in that kind of place where you have taken the war into a civilian territory, even if they've warned you to say to get out of there. But if you don't let them take that action, that is the statistical reality of it. So yes, Israel's responding. And it's arguably too much of a response, but that is also part of the problem, because we're not allowing, we can't. Western civilization can't handle taking care of business the way you kind of have to, right? And as in, like, there, when the bombs fell in Japan, in America, there was celebration about the end of the war. And until people realized that, oh, that's what happened when the bomb went off in Japan, that changed the way people thought about things. And that's why that action had to happen as fast and as quick in the US as it did, because had it prolonged further, had the war gone on a bit more, the bombs and the kind of fallout literally that happened because of that would have lost America would have not been able to continue the war as well, because people would have said, no, this is too much, we can't do that, we can't continue. So it's never as easy as people just say that, okay, we shouldn't be doing this, we should, it's like, what do you do with this? What is the future of a country if someone has declared that they want to completely kill you?
Yeah.
Right? You then say, let's have a beer. I mean, obviously not the thing that's going to happen there, but it's not likely. So one of the comments that I've been hearing has been this. When someone says they are out to kill you, maybe you have to take their word for it.
Yeah, I mean, well, no matter what happens, like Hamas has won, right?
Yep.
It was horrific what they did, but that strategy means that they've won. And the way the whole world's responding to it. And you're right, it's just not. It's not simple. It's not black and white. All right. So the other war, of course, that's going on in the world is Russia and Ukraine, and we're not hearing as much of that in the media at the moment. So the US just, I think yesterday, said that the Republicans voted no to more financial and sort of military aid. So that's a problem because I don't think Russia's going to stop from what I'm seeing. But there's also a great freeze that has started across Europe, and in Ukraine and Russia, the soldiers are facing terrible conditions. But one of the things that's been sort of mentioned in the last sort of couple of weeks is Russian leadership talking about creating a new world order. So that's their focus. And so when I hear that, my question is, what are they willing to do to achieve that? And I think that's what the unknown has always been. There's some really interesting stuff I'm going to include in the weekend reads about. There's one article in particular on China is paying attention to what's going on in the wars, especially from a nuclear perspective, because they don't have the same level of nuclear power. And I think what China does is definitely going to be a big part of what happens. It seems to me that China is pushing for peace in the world, but they're certainly paying attention to the military sides on every angle. They're watching what everyone's got, how they're using the technology. Obviously, nuclear is a big issue in the mix, and so that's kind of interesting. But I'm feeling for the soldiers who are freezing, fighting this stupid war that needs to stop as well. Anyway, thoughts?
Yeah,
I think if I may chime in here, actually it's a little bit of a shift from all the political talk, but it's about highlighting a hero story. I'm a Rotarian and a fellow Rotarian, Praveen. Actually, back in 2022, right, when he first heard about the Ukraine war, he's a nurse, and he literally packed his bag and flew over to Poland, contacted fellow Rotarians there, and he was, helping Ukrainian refugees. And I think this is, to me, in any war that on either side, right, there's always the people who have lost their homes, who are displaced, who are suffering on both sides, whether it's Ukraine or Russia, whether it's Israel or Palestinians. So that's where I want to put my focus on, right, and look at what we can do to help people. And so I think when there are heroes like that who really go out of their way to do that little bit to just ease the suffering, I just personally think they are amazing and inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's tell their stories. Yeah,
I think the instability also is trying to establish some stability, just like it's atrophy, where the energy just pass around this chaotic part, and then you have a bit more stability. You can see that some of the countries around the region will then band up together to say maybe we do want a different way and way of government. So I think, again, like I say, we have no clarity to whether there's a better options or not. But I think hopefully the good leaders can really band up and really stabilize this for us.
Yeah.
Not then Elon Musk may not be that stupid after all, and like he got his spaceship
Mars
ready.
plan.
Cybertruck ready, the buildable house ready, and the robots are ready, and the neural links ready, so we can just move to Mars if we ever move to Mars. Yes.
Yeah, I think we've got to start taking care of this planet. Otherwise, we'll just turn up on another one and destroy it. All right, Joe, the global economy.
Well, it's been a really interesting past year, and actually the economy keeps moving back and forth. Because if you look at if you look at, I mean, a lot of people look at stock markets and think, "Oh, that's a good indicator how things are going." No, a stock market really just tells you what price everything is going at today. It's not a reliable way to see how the economy is going, because it usually follows what's happening in the world. So. Right now, so I'm going to just take a moment and say, look, all this stuff about the markets and how well they're doing despite everything does not give you a really good reason to be chirpy about the future, because the world's growth is actually slowing down. This is actually what is the challenge that we're facing right now. The global economy is slowing down, and in terms of when we expect things to really kind of come back, it's probably going to be a year after, so like 25 or 26. So next year is really going to be challenging, but this year has seen some slowdowns as well. And the reasons for all the slowdowns are going to be things like inflation, high rates, interest rates as well, and of course war. So we had one situation like halfway through this year, it looked really dire, as well as we talk about the challenges coming up, because people are not still very aware of the kind of food shortages that are probably going to come out of the Ukraine situation, because we're not done with that, right? There's still lots of food instability that's going to come out of that particular conflict. But you combine that now with higher inflation, and also governments that really have a challenge on their hands, because the answer to what they need to do from an economist's point of view is austerity. And we're not made for that. The world isn't made for austerity anymore. It's not the idea that we're going to band together and give up a lot of things just so that we can get out of it together. We don't seem to have the stomach for that, at least as far as politics is concerned. Every time someone's tried to do that thing with austerity, the responsible fiscal thing, they've been punished in the ballot boxes. So it's a tough one. So you find that conflict in terms of what we're facing and what we need to do, and the balance is very hard to come up with. Of course, the geo-economic fragmentation as well poses challenges to the economy. This is from Antara News. If you look at just various factions, this includes, of course, as we talked about Ukraine earlier, but the way the world is also diverging in terms of how it's doing business. I mean, China has changed quite significantly what its own home economy has been about recently. A lot of that had to do with the property situation that they had, and that really drastically changed the way wealth worked in China. And the relooking, or at least it seems to be a readjustment of how much consumption happens as well. So from an economist point of view, economies need to thrive with consumption, and consumption has actually taken a bit more of a backseat in China as they move towards investment in infrastructure. So that's going to slow the economy as well. Not to say that China is not going to grow; it's just not going to grow as fast as it did. It's still better off than many of the other economies of the world. But a lot of Chinese are still poor. That's the reality there. The Moody's, that famous ratings company, basically has given the U.S. a negative outlook. This is not to be confused with the credit rating that Moody's usually puts out as well. So while the U.S. outlook has been defined as negative, they have maintained their AAA status in terms of their credit rating. But the claim that there is now some controversy about the treasuries in terms of what is a safe and liquid asset. Yes, you can still convert them easily into US dollars, but the US dollar itself is the one that we're concerned about, as in, like, is the US dollar still going to be the same thing it will be as it was, and it's been changing all throughout the year. There has been some strength as the economy is going left and right, but when you think about what's happening in I think it's the BRICS nations, right? I mean, they're forming a new way of doing business, so that you might end up buying oil no longer in U.S. dollars, and that's going to significantly change the way the U.S. dollar becomes a required currency. So a lot of the world's a lot of the buoyancy of the U.S. dollar actually comes from the fact that you need the U.S. dollar to transact a lot of the deals in the world. But if there is a shift away from the U.S. dollar as the main currency, that is also going to make a difference. For now, things look pretty good. For now, I would say the treasuries, yes, you still have that safe and liquid asset. But it's like you wonder whether or not when you cash in your U.S. dollars, if they're worth as much as you were hoping they'd be worth in a global scale. What else we got? I think that's kind of what we've got right now. I think that the big call for the world right now, you're hearing a lot of it, is actually about how we need to think a little bit more about how to move away from capitalism. Capitalism does create a lot of great things, and it has brought us to where we are. But arguably, it's also going to take us over the edge and over the cliff. So, yeah, I think there's a need for some kind of revision in terms of how we do it. But that kind of a change is not going to come really easy, because as happens with wild wildebeests, as they're running towards a cliff, as they're stampeding towards the cliff, even if the ones in front stop, it doesn't stop the rest behind from continuing to go forward as well. So we have that kind of a situation in the world right now. Our lifestyles, our economies, the way we plan for the future, a lot of it's still based on that kind of a economy, the idea of the way things run. So we have to wean ourselves of it in a very sudden way, and it's one of those things where the way out seems to be we have to do more of it. It's like the way for the climate situation to be improved, we have to find solutions, build some other solutions that are going to work, and the very process of building itself is actually causing more damage too, but it helps us get a bit closer to the final thing. So we need to do some culling very uncomfortably in terms of our way of doing things before we get to the other side. And as we're doing it, we're still going to cause more harm. So that's the chirpy outlook for the future.
Yeah, it's really interesting listening to you talk, Joe, because I reckon about a couple of years ago you wouldn't have been anywhere near thinking that way, right? But I think you finally seen the light, and that's nowhere easy. I always say we decide, or nature decides, regardless of the decision will be made. So we're up against physics, and we're using too much energy, and that's a problem.
I'm going to defend my younger self. I'm saying that I still believe in the free market. The thing is, what has become currency, or what is currency now, is changing, right? So I still very much believe in the free market. It's just how we now design that. So capitalism isn't necessarily the free market. It's just capitalism is based on one idea of measurement of a free market.
I think if I may chime in here, I think this is why, for me, as business leaders, as business owners, I think we can do our part in shifting, right, in educating investors, for instance, right, and in staying our ground, right, to say that, hey, actually, it's not always about just chasing profit alone. That when we build businesses, we should be building businesses with a conscience, right? With that is really serving the people and giving them what they really need, and that when the purpose is there, and I think the other thing about businesses is that we create employment, right, for a lot of people, and that whole consciousness of having a very clear purpose, of taking care of the people in our businesses, and in serving then our clients, and of course, Andrea, what you're very much about, right? Caring for the planet. Like if we do all these three well, the profit will follow. Not the extreme crazy kind of profit that capitalism provides us, but it will be a fairer way, and everybody will be more comfortable. I think business owners, business leaders are in that driver's seat in making that change, and and I think this is where we are at now.
So to add on, right? When we are adding on to our growth, our investors now, you're quite sure they're not that maverick anymore. There's lack of fund from the private equity side. Funding from banks and lending is so expensive now, right? So businesses really have to really dig deep now to really sustain themselves, right? So I think that whole the proper way of conducting yourself, because customers are also very clever. You are not doing them a favor, they won't come. So you have to do it properly, and then sustain, and then you grow really organically, right? And that's how things is going forward. No longer that crazy, just what happened to WeWorks, for example. The money came in, a few $1 billion can just vaporize just like that.
Yeah.
And I see a trend of going back towards what nature intended, right? Or how business was originally even started in the past, right? Bartering of services maybe, or a lot more collaboration. I think this is possible, and we just have to be more conscious and hark back to what nature already shows us as an example of how, in nature, right, the whole diversity, the whole ecosystem, right, how that works, and how actually someone or one insect or one animal that we see as a pest may not actually be a bad thing, right, when they're coming in to control the population of something else, right, that started out as good but could be harmful. So I think we have a lot of lessons that we can take from nature, and we should constantly look at that as a model for how we should be shaping ourselves in the future.
Yeah. So one of nature's abilities is it has no waste, and we all know how much waste we have. So for me, one of the biggest steps that businesses need to take is really look at themselves and say, do we have a right to exist in this world at all? And you think about that, like you think if we got all businesses, all industries in the world to really sit there and go, do I have a right to exist? Am I good for the planet? Am I good for humanity? And if we could strip all that out, and I know that, the jobs conversation, we've got to keep people employed. And that's where things like universal basic income, I'd love to see every country on this planet give people universal basic income, and then their job is to go out and rewild their country, clean up their environments, pay people to get the earth back in order. So, but we need to be thinking in a radically new way. All right, so global politics, obviously it's been a bumpy year. It was good to see Lula sworn in Brazil. Jacinda Ardern resigned at the beginning of the year, and they've now gone more conservative as a country. McCarthy, the US House, became the US House Speaker, and then he wasn't the US House Speaker, and now he's about to resign at the end of this year. And Mike Johnson is now in the role. If you haven't come across him, he's quite an interesting guy. We saw Xi Jinping has gone into his third term, which is not normal for China. Fox News settled its Dominion voting systems. We had the BRICS. We had Prigozhin assassinated, or whatever happened to him in that plane crash. But more recently, we had Australia voting against giving our First Nations people a voice to Parliament, which was incredibly disappointing for me. Javier Milei in Argentina, the crazy man, has been elected. So let's see what he does. But also the Dutch government has gone extremely far right, with a guy called Geert Wilders unexpectedly winning the most seats. And of course, just this last week, George Santos was finally kicked out after a vote in the House of Representatives. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff. And I mean, we're not even talking about Donald Trump and all of his legal woes. We talked about Boris Johnson and what he's going through with the COVID inquiry. But there's so much going on in the world of global politics. It's it's quite stunning. What's your standout moment politically this year? I think Asia's been quite quiet, right?
Well, just in terms of relative, it's always like when you have someone, a really noisy neighbor, then they're the worst neighbor, right? You kind of get off the list. So I think we haven't noticed what's been happening as well. So yeah, it's just I think America has taken all the attention away from the rest of the. I mean, occasionally we shift a bit to Argentina, whatever it is, and then the U.S. comes up with a new trick. I mean, so the one of the great risks. I forgot to mention this in the earlier thing about what Moody's outlook about the U.S. was about. Is that political risk in the U.S. is so bad because. It's so polarized, so difficult for government to run in any way to govern that it's unlikely that the government can do the job of governing to drive itself or pull itself in the right direction. So the U.S. economy, because of all the individual business owners and everything else that is moving forward, despite all that, is going to do pretty all right. But the big decisions that have to be done at the government level may not come because of that whole thing. But I don't want you're not in my camp. I'm not going to give you any credit for it.
Yeah, what of that? All right, do you want to move on to business? You guys want anything about politics you want to mention?
I think one name that really strike up from the list that you highlighted is Jacinda Ardern. I'm a total fan of hers and the way that she conducted herself, especially with the children, navigating them through the COVID period. So I must say I was sad when I heard that she resigned. But really also want to just highlight. I think she's just been she's the kind of leader that I hope the world has more of, right? Someone who's really coming across as, very kind, very compassionate, and yet very strong, and so just want to give her special mention. She's got a special place in my heart.
And those and female politicians like that also need to stop being attacked and trolled and death threats and all the stuff that comes with it, because in the end of the day, that's why she just couldn't do it anymore.
For the family, right? And
Well, I mean, I noticed that we talked about politics, but we didn't talk about the presidential elections here in Singapore. Wasn't that a big thing? I kid. Okay. Business. Big year lots of things happened. We had on January 24th, the Adani Enterprises, which is owned by Gautam Adani. The world's third richest man. Basically, that business lost $108 billion in value after the investment firm Hindenburg Research publishes a report alleging stock manipulation and accounting fraud. You remember the big accident in the U.S. as well, where toxic chemicals, including vinyl chloride, derailed in Ohio. That started a fire, and then after that, they had to have an intentional burn-off of the chemicals to stop a possible explosion as well. In March, we had UBS, basically involved in Switzerland's too big to fail situation. The largest bank agreed to buy its rival, Credit Suisse, for about $3.2 billion to help ease global financial panic. It was a deal brokered by the Swiss government. Of course, this year we had all the talk about AI, and not so much that AI is new, but because it came to the fore. So ChatGPT really is the other name that you usually know about in terms of AI. AI has been around for a long time. Your phone has been doing AI forever, just maybe not as well as you thought it might have. But yeah, the AI revolution we had on May the 1st. Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, he resigned from Google to speak out about the dangers of AI, the economic as well as social things, eliminating jobs, creating a world where many may not be able to know what is true anymore. And that has a lot to do with how AI is able to create images. And things have been moving so fast that from that time, May 1st until now, The problem that he resigned over has become worse. I guess maybe he saw what was coming, and that was the situation. So speaking of things that happen on screen, the Writers Guild of America votes to begin striking over pay and industry changes, bringing television production to a halt. A big part of the complaints and the concerns were actually in the area of AI as well. So they saw what was likely to happen as AI moves forward. So if you think ChatGPT 4.0 is pretty smart right now, and the commentary is always about how you can't use AI to write good jokes. Try asking them to write a good joke. It gets better. So it is moving closer and closer to that. And what the Writers Guild of America, as well as the actors, so I think the SAG as well, the Screen Actors Guild, ended up striking about is about the future of creativity in the world of AI as well, and a fairer sharing of the pie, because in terms of all the streaming services, I think they weren't getting a fair cut. So you can have a hit show that was on streaming and you'd still not be able to make a good living. May 12, Elon Musk announced that NBC Universal executive Linda Yaccarino would replace him as CEO of Twitter. A lot of good that did. Seems that despite that, he's just had his fun with that. I mentioned the actors, the SAG-AFTRA leadership going on strike along with their colleagues in the Writers Guild on July 14th. Rupert Murdoch finally moved on in terms of if you watch the series Succession, it's supposed to be this sort of like parallel story told about Rupert Murdoch and his family. At 92, at the tender age of 92, he announced that he is retiring from the board of Fox and News Corporation, leaving his son Lachlan in charge. And by reputation, he's apparently not much of an improvement. November 2nd, former cryptocurrency star Sam Bankman-Fried was convicted of 7 counts of fraud, of course, for the earlier shenanigans that happened at his company, FTX and Alameda Research in a New York court. Basically, upon investigation and finding out more about this, this was a terribly, terribly run company that had huge ambitions. It's basically what happens when college kids decide they can do all the adult stuff without learning all the adult stuff. And of course, they had a lot of very interested, investors. And despite everything that's happened since then, people always thought about this as the collapse of it all. If you've looked at crypto recently, you realize that no, it's still marching forward. I have some thoughts about that, but that's not what we're talking about here. November 17th, high-profile AI boss Sam Altman was sacked from the company he co-founded, OpenAI, apparently over a lie he told to the board. I never found out what the lie was about, although some people suspect it had something to do with a breakthrough that was coming, that was seen to be something that was going to be quite devastating or dangerous to humankind. That was the vibe about that. However, I think the board misjudged how much of the loyalty of the company was linked back to him, and as you heard earlier, 4 days later he was back in charge as well. The fossil fuel industry is a sunset industry. I'm just kidding. No, it's doing rather well. We still have a huge appetite for it. And global warming also causes something that we are going to need a way to heat ourselves up with. So there's going to be a need for a lot of fuel during the colder parts, especially in further up and down from the equator. So there's going to be a lot more consumption happening in terms of fuel just to stay warm. And as I said, the business is in no danger of doing worse currently. And so if you've heard about the current meeting of the COP, I think the COP meeting that's going on right now, despite everything that's being said, the backdrop is that despite everyone saying that we need to get off it, we are still very, very much on it. The environment, well, and I think this is your area, Andrea.
Yeah, but going back through business, it was certainly the year of AI. Any other business developments that you guys saw or noticed?
I think just on the part of AI, I think this is newly launched. Google's version called Gemini. I think that's one to be reckoned with, because ChatGPT is only text, right? Because apparently Gemini has been fed with videos and images. So I think that's something that I am personally looking out for. For me, it's like ChatGPT has been godsend. It's almost like my friend, right? I can call on for everything and anything, right? Draft me a contract or give me some marketing ideas, So really, I totally embrace this as a tool, and I'm looking forward to what Gemini has to offer. Yeah.
Well, just as we move into the environment sector, I think it's either 40 questions or 40 lines in response from an AI machine is the equivalent of drinking a bottle of water. So there's actually a huge, it demands a huge amount of energy. So all this efficiency actually also has an environmental impact. And that's a conversation that's going on that might not be in the mainstream, but use it wisely. I'm not loving it. I know I need to sort of get stuck into it because I'd be stupid if I wasn't. But yeah, from an environment perspective, so this is going to be the hottest year on record, and it's the hottest year in 250,000 years. You might also read 125,000 years, but most of the experts are saying 250,000 years. And in Asia, we experienced wet bulb temperatures for the first time back in the hot season, which is February to April, and that certainly spun me out. I always knew it was coming, but many did not. So I think it really feels like this is the year that the world woke up. But the problem with when you wake up to the climate emergency and what's really going on, especially if you start digging into it, is it sends a lot of people into a panic. And I'm seeing the panicked voices out there, and there's a lot of them. And you've got to get through the panic to the other side, to acceptance, before you can actually sort of be rational about it. So, but just, from extreme events, we saw obviously the massive fires in Canada, which are just catastrophic, where Canada's actually being talked about as a failed state because of the fires. We obviously saw them across Europe, and then the devastating fire in Maui. Droughts are having massive impacts on crops. Have you guys noticed the increase in olive oil prices? I stocked up on olive oil a couple of years ago. Have you guys noticed? Yeah, it's a good thing to stock up on. But food insecurity, it's certainly increasing. So wherever you are, plant a garden. We need to have some food independence, because this is going to get worse. And the hotter every 0.1 of a degree warming impacts crops. And we've also got to help those who've been impacted by famine, cyclones, hurricanes, typhoons. And I think the most shocking one for me this year was the one that hit Acapulco. It emerged from a category 1 to a category 5 within hours, and that's like they couldn't do anything about it. We had a glacial lake outburst, which happened last year in Pakistan. This year it happened in India, and there was another one in Alaska, and of course the floods that come with it. Devastating flooding all over the world with truly shocking stories and terrible landslides. We had heat extremes all over the world, in the ocean and on land. Brazil recently experienced 59.7 degrees Celsius wet bulb temperatures, and that was all around the Taylor Swift concert. These are completely unlivable territories, and this week Australia is going through an extreme heat wave where there's a small town in South Australia. It's all in the mid-40s. It's the hottest place on Earth right now. The glaciers are melting, and that's just climate change. And COP26 is about climate change, right? So I don't know if everyone's really putting the whole story together about how complex this situation is and why we're in a planetary crisis. So you've got climate change, so that's the warming of it, but you've also got biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse and extinctions. You've got the waste crisis, forever chemicals and the impact that they're having on all life on Earth, and forever chemicals are everywhere now. Aerosols, whether there's too many or too few, have an impact on what's going on. The critical ozone layer, which last time we talked about, has now been announced that it never disappeared and it's expanding again. And of course, the health of our oceans, rivers and aquifers. So we've done a number on our planet, no question about it. And, we're in the middle of COP28, which Joe mentioned. And, this is the moment when they're going through the process. So the glam and the show is over. And now that it's negotiations, and the big one is we've got to make a commitment to phase out fossil fuels. And we've heard that that's not necessarily going to happen, but let's hope it does. So either way, whatever happens at COP, we've really got to come together as a global society and get the job done and regenerate our land. You know, we need medical and scientific professionals working out how can we live in a world. You know, I think we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. The forever chemicals that are in our environment, they believe that by 2060, human males will be sterile by 2060. But it's not just humans that are being impacted by forever chemicals. It's all life on Earth and reproductive cycles of all life on Earth. So we're in trouble, and it's been a big year for the environment. I feel like everyone's finally waking up. Are we too late? I think we've just got to say, like I know the answer to that, but I think we've just got to say, no one believes that we're capable of changing at the scale that we need to change. And that's why no one believes that we're capable of doing what we need to do. So this is the time for us to really step in wherever we are, all over the planet, and sort it out. It's our only chance.
I've been encouraged by the bits of news that come out of COP that I've seen inadvertently, because I don't consume much mainstream media. But we had a staycation recently, and the TV's always on. So what was sort of interesting for me is I think this is the first time I've heard almost everything coming out of COVID, coming out of COP, being about fossil fuels. So it's much more unity on that particular front this time around. You know, usually it's a kind of a polite non-mentioning of that rather troublesome subject, but this time around, I think they're a bit more head-on about fossil fuels.
Yeah, let's see if they put the words in the final document. That's always the struggle. But I just realised we've gone over time. How are you guys doing for time? Do you need to jump off soon?
Nope.
How about we, you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. How about we finish up with COVID, which most people would have thought was over this year, but there's some pretty interesting stuff going on, and then we can wrap it up.
Well, the big news in the early part of the year was basically China and the big outbreak that they had, because China had been trying to maintain a zero tolerance, right? Basically, so if there was an outbreak, everything would be in lockdown. And what happened for them is they had a big social change in terms of seeing what was happening across the fence. So there was a sudden outburst of the knowledge that the rest of the world was doing things very differently, and so there was a sudden change in the policy. And so much of China, which wasn't as vaccinated as the rest of the world, was suddenly in a situation where it was from zero tolerance to no real measures in place to try and stop it. And there was a huge outbreak. So 60,000 COVID-19 related deaths in just over a month, with some estimates that some 900 million people have been infected. That's some 64% of the country's population. That was in January. And I think what was interesting about this actually is how the rest of the world really didn't pay much attention to that, and didn't really say, wait, hang on, that's what happens if you really didn't do the rest of the stuff we're doing. That's the kind of outbreak that happens over there. And for me, that was the significance there. May 4th, WHO declared that the COVID-19 was over as a global health emergency, but remains a significant threat. Along the year as well, we found out much more about the emergence of information about long COVID and the effects that it's having. So the nature of it is it is a disease that is a prolonged disease. So you're not going to get information about that immediately after the fact. People don't realize that COVID is actually still rather young as a disease. So its long-term impacts are still to come. You may have heard this is technically not COVID, but there's a pneumonia that has been affecting mostly children, causing white lung. Doctors are very concerned about this as well. And I think what we are looking out for as well, for me, what my personal concern about it is what we did during COVID is actually going to affect our ability in the future to try to address some other kind of outbreak if there is an outbreak or pandemic. Because of, I think part of it is just fatigue from having to do the right thing. It's equivalent of austerity, really. You have to kind of have an austere life and not have your full lifestyle. So I think we're being fed a lot of ideas where people talk about, it didn't make that much of a difference what we were doing to try to kind of address COVID. And I really think people are very bad at looking back at the whole thing and asking themselves, what would you do if you were faced with a different kind of situation? I mean, most people are not going to be able to say, like, what if you could just say, I'm going to let this thing happen? And you would, I mean, like in my particular neighborhood, for instance, where we have a large population of older people, the idea that you would not try to contain COVID and just let it run through, and just I can't imagine losing 10% of the people in my neighborhood because that's just the way this disease works. So I think those questions sometimes are going to be we haven't considered them, so we're not going to be ready for the next thing. So I'm hoping it'll be a long time before the next pandemic, because if it happens shortly, we are going to be completely screwed. We're not going to be able to do the things we need to do. Too much damage has been done by the governments of the world in terms of credibility. I can't imagine the UK being able to put a lid on any kind of outbreak now, because look what happened the last time, right?
Yeah, I it's so frustrating because right from word go when we first started doing the show, COVID's been with us. I was reading the other day that the fact that we didn't contain it and do what we needed to do and do the right things means that humanity is going to be dealing with this for 100 years, and the arrogance of humanity in dealing with a virus, like how stupid were we? But we've got a doctor here. Maybe he's got some thoughts. What do you, or Louisa?
No pressure.
I think the real fact is that we are, as a human being, we have more external viruses or bacteria on us than our own human cells. So I think we have to come to that reality. All right. So we're always living in that balance, like the external world. We have also an internal universe that is in us. So understanding the viruses also is understanding our immune system. How did we come so far, to be here talking to each other? Is that we depended on some immune system capability of our own self. Like, for example, at the very beginning of COVID, there was a dormitory, like say, wildfire that went through, right? And a lot of people are getting COVID. So the simple method we came up with a pulmonologist from Harvard, system engineering professor from the US, and a breathing expert from Australia, myself and Louisa and the team, right, is to just use your nose to breathe properly, right? You have nitric oxide coming out from your sinus lining that can kill viruses, and it's thankfully now being researched very extensively to see how it can kill SARS-2, right? So the fact is that we have immune system capability to just clear, but we need to use it properly. So if we are more engaged in the whole practice of breathing, right, your immune system increase because of parasympathetic system, not just just using medication or anything else to boost, but just calming the body down, immune system improves as well. So there's so much already cultural inheritance, in the sense it's thousands of years that we're talking about it. Now that we also have the research backing to actually understand that nose breathing is very, very important, right? Why don't we use that so that we can, slow down that whole attack by our good small friends around us. Yep.
So funny. Did you instantly start breathing through your nose, Joe?
I've been holding my breath all this time.
Yeah, but the immunity is obviously a big issue. Like, I've got one of my sons came back from school this week with a bit of a tickle. Now I've got it, and it seems to be sort of like someone's always sick around us, or we've got an event and someone's had to cancel, and it seems to be fairly ongoing, right? This immunity deficit that we've all experienced. So, anything else that? So it's been a hard year. There's no question about it, and And I think, I always have this feeling of euphoria on New Year's Eve as we go into a new year and new opportunities, all that sort of stuff. I haven't had that feeling for a while now. I personally think it's, I know a lot of people are avoiding the negatives, but we've got to get ready for the future that's coming. So that's, making sure your family's safe. Prepare, like when we were talking about the economic situation, go and understand it from your own perspective, so at least you can make sure that where your money is safe. You don't have to panic about it. You just need to understand it, because so many people get blindsided by this, but the wealthy people will be all right, but it's the average people, where your pensions are, they are at risk. If you're investing in fossil fuel, what's that risk and how far away is it? So I think it's just really important. Look at it practically from your own perspective. That's what I'd say. But we need to adapt to the weather that's coming. Governments, apart from Singapore, governments around the world are not getting prepared for it. So make sure that you're getting your family and your community prepared, because the heat is coming, the water's coming, the fire's coming. Wherever you are, there's something coming. So I think just focusing on adaptation is a really important thing. Any other conclusions from this year?
Well, I was at a talk yesterday, and this thing about how, when you're faced with all of these different situations, and then you realize, you touch yourself and you're like, oh, hang on, wait, I'm alive. That is also something to be kind of enthusiastic about, as in, like, yes, everything is kind of terrible, and yes, I'm still here, and maybe I should do something with it. So the speaker that was speaking, his name escapes me right now. Mahir Kadura, I think it was. Yeah, he just mentioned that, basically we still have that 18,400 number that looms over all our heads, and that's the number of seconds we have each day. And it's a decision to do something with that, right? You can either do something useful. Look, Arnold Schwarzenegger's new book, right? It's something about that, really. It's just about that. Just be useful, right? Do something useful. Move the needle in the right direction. It's the most trite of examples, really. As a speaker, any speaker who goes on stage and tells a story about the starfish, they should be shot. But it's still the truth, as in, like, it is still really what you can do, right?
The goldfish too.
I haven't heard the goldfish one.
Oh, that's the attention span of a goldfish has been disproven many, many, many times. So don't use it.
Yes, goldfish are a lot more intelligent than we give them credit for.
I think for me, is at least and Louisa as well, we're optimists. So again, like I say, we want to face the challenge, and we want to in our little way, make a world a better place. We're now get interested party like medical doctors, even cardiologists, to work together, and we're seeing light. We're seeing more integrativeness. We are moving like hand in hand to do more with less, even. So I think to us it's good. I still look forward with all that noise around us. I think you have to find that inner peace, so that you can really focus and really continue to believe in yourself, right? First, I think, and then create the difference. Yeah. So we're hard at it, and we don't want to be derailed. We will do our best. Yeah.
Nice.
I think I want to end on a note of hope, right? And to me, our answer perhaps lies in quantum science. That is the trend that I'm seeing in the future. And, that's where, a lot of this is invisible at the moment to us. And hence we are not able to fully know how to harness it yet. Right. So if we are just viewing the world as it is with the technology that we know is happening right now, then it doesn't seem like there is a solution. But I think the hope comes in the fact that actually there's still a lot, like 90%, of what we don't know yet that is invisible at this moment. But we are catching up and we are knowing more and more about it. there is collective energy. I mean, there is collective, energy that can be harnessed. I remember this example of how, in Thailand, right, this monk gathered all these children, and they just focused on removing the haze, and basically it cleared for that few hours that they were focused in meditation on, so Andrea, it's not all lost really, and I think the solution is just not seen at the moment, but something will come, and who knows, there is a solution out there that can actually really solve things exponentially, right? That we are just not aware yet.
Okay, all right. So the hope thing, so I get a lot of people saying to me, Andrew, you've got to make sure you keep the hope in there. There's a really interesting conversation around hope, where they're saying basically hope is on the flip side of the coin of fear, and they both stop you moving forward, which I thought was it's an interesting area I've been looking into this year, and I actually think what we need is resilience and determination. And yes, there's going to be something wonderful that's going to come, and us coming together is the best thing that can happen, rather than being separated. But it needs action, and it needs resilience, and I think getting our minds strong, like so many people tell me they can't cope with anything that's going on in the world at the moment, and I get it, I really understand it, but if you at least pay attention to the risks that you as a person in your community, your family face, at least do that and prepare for that, so because if you get sideswiped, then where are you going, so that's all I really want to emphasize. All right, so what do you watch, listen to, read when you don't want to pay attention to any of the ugly stuff? What's distracting you?
Oh wow, I'm getting my daily feed from WeChat, so it's still news around the world, but I think it's just my way to just understand and appreciate. That's all.
Yeah, right. Okay, all right. Louisa, anything? You reading anything or listening to any podcasts? Or
I think like I mentioned earlier, I want to dig more into quantum science, and I am on the mailing list of this person called Gennaro Cofano, and he wrote this thing on 4-week MBA. So so for me, I realized actually listening to all that you've shared and summarized, I'm really grateful, because it's like I'm getting a whole year's download of worthy news, right? In 2 hours, in 1.5 hours, because I realized that, in order to cope with all the multiple roles that I have to play on a daily life, right, I literally have no time to, even pay attention to things that is outside what my role requires. But so thank you.
It's funny, Joe. What about you? And by the way, I don't know where to watch that Wrexham documentary you keep talking about. I've looked for it, and I can't find it anywhere.
Disney Plus. Welcome to Wrexham is on Disney Plus.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So
I'll that's I mean, and that rabbit hole continues if you like. On the next thing, I mean, we just found that you can actually buy a pass and follow this lower division team through their live streams over the internet. But there you go, £10 for a ticket, or you can get a half-season pass.
That's clever.
So after we watch Wrexham, the recommended show to follow up with, actually, which I'm also going to recommend to you, is Brawn, the Impossible Formula One story. I'm not sure if you've heard much about this, but if those of you, if you do follow Formula One, you may have noticed somewhere along the way that Honda disappeared from the whole scene. You remember Honda, Earth Dreams, all that kind of stuff, and suddenly it all disappeared. They were swallowed up actually by the financial crisis, and it basically was a situation where the team that they sponsored was going to go completely out of business. They're just going to stop completely. And this was really the incredible story of what they did coming out of that. So if you think about an underfunded team, where the main sponsor basically has said, we're going to have to close this down. What would you do with that situation, and what are the things that can happen out of that? This particular show is very, very interesting. It's hosted by Keanu Reeves, and he's an interesting interviewer as well. Quite a different way of approaching the subject. But I think you'll enjoy it. Braun, the Impossible Formula One story. So many things happened to this one team in that 1 year that it was enough for a series all by itself. So go check it out. It's a really, really, really good story.
And I'm realizing that Netflix or having your own series, right, on Disney Plus or Netflix seems to be like the ultimate marketing machine or PR.
Yeah, especially for Formula One, right? Yeah. I think Drive to Survive completely transformed Formula One. But yeah, no, that's one I watch with my son. With my son Jax, he's a bit of a car head. He loves his Formula One, which I don't. But anyway, so I've just started getting into the Vikings Valhalla series. Now, have you guys watched it? Any of that? It's on Netflix. It's like the first series in particular. It's pretty badly acted, but it's compelling enough to keep going. But I love the story of the gods. Because I'm a big history buff when it comes to that sort of stuff, but also the story of the Vikings and the role of men and women, female warriors, all that sort of stuff. So I've been enjoying that. It's good distraction. With Steve being away, so I can't watch it while he's away. I've had a couple of weeks where I've been looking for something that I know that he'd hate, so it's something usually girly. I haven't been able to find anything. So if anyone's got a girly recommendation, I'm always happy for that. But Any
just
other
reminded
thoughts?
me of something. You should add in like a what to watch on Netflix, to your list of weekly whatever reads, right? Because what I'm realizing is that we are actually all victims of being profiled, and so Netflix keeps throwing me more and more Korean dramas because I watched a couple, and then I'm realizing that it's not giving me a lot of other things, right, that I would otherwise have found. So I think we need a directory. We need a
or recommend to our friends, right?
Yeah, because I think this algorithm thing is not good in the long run too, right? Because it's gonna be just tunneling us to more and more of the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I recently got my Spotify download of the year. Are you guys on Spotify?
Yes. I haven't got mine yet. Yeah, so I'll look up for it. Yeah.
It was Korn, Metallica, Megadeth. You name it. I'm like, at some point, I'll be able to get, so imagine what Spotify is pushing my way these days. Not what I want.
Yep. So just to be mindful of that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Don't trust the algorithms. They're not on your side. They're not.
But you
on
don't
your
even
side.
know that they are acting. They're.
But we should. We should.
But I have a walking algorithm at home. My second son now is a soccer freak. Yeah, so he knows everybody who's playing in every club all over the world. So getting a download from it every day. And but truth is, I'm really getting to enjoy EPL or the British League again. So the English League. I'm a Liverpool fan, and recent games are really exciting. And I think that's one of the few 90 minutes that you can go like down and up and down and up, so many times. So I highly recommend watching a soccer match again.
It's nice, and it's nice to enjoy it with one of your kids, right? When they've got different sort of
bonding time.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and then play the FIFA together.
Yeah. Oh, well, Louisa Louis, Weng Chu, thank you so much for coming and joining us on this show. It's a big one. I know it's the biggest one, and it's actually hard to take things out because there's so much going on. And Joe, end of the season for another year. I don't know when we'll kick off again, January, February sometime, but it's been a good year, right?
No, I definitely look for one of the things that I put on my things, my list of things that I need to do is this show. So it's something that keeps me thinking about things. And honestly, the weekend reads by you, I'm a terrible reader, so I actually don't read them, but I know the amount of work that goes into it. And I know this is my way of reading the weekend reads light, right? I'm not getting the whole thing. I'm just getting the highlights here. So this has been very important to me, keeping up with things as well. So much as we've been telling people about it, for me, it's a constant re-education for myself as well. This is me coming to something, and I think talking about something that is very important. So for me, someone asked me what would I want to see in the world, more in the world. I just want to see more discussions about things based on fact. People need to know more about things, go out of their realms and find out what the alternative ideas are, and try and figure out how those ideas come out and what's valid. And one thought that I want to kind of leave with you is that, you can have something that's completely true for you, and someone else can have something that's completely true for you, for them. There's no need for us to say that what you believe is not what you believe, isn't right. I'm quite happy to sit with someone who says the earth is flat, because it doesn't make a difference to me.
Yeah. I think we're lacking nuance, an appreciation of it. I think that's a massive thing, but also we're lacking the ability to look at the news from every perspective. So, when I put the weekend reads together, there's people that I disagree with, but I still listen to them. I don't fight with people on social media who disagree with me. Like, that's fine. Whatever. We've all got different points of view. So not going in for the fight all the time. It's not necessary. If someone's put something up that you just think is stupid, you don't need to engage with that content. You
I think
really
it's coming of age. Yeah.
Because those people believe what they believe, and that's fine, and they've got a right to do it. That's the society, free speech and all that. We either believe in it or we don't, right? If you think you can, every now and again I'll put, like, if someone puts a comment or a post which I think is dangerous, I might sort of say, hey, you might want to check this, but I'm not attacking them, because we've got all got access to the information and the same information, except what are the algorithms driving you towards. But if you look at every angle of news, the algorithms get confused because they don't know where you stand. So that's kind of that's another good reason to be looking at every angle. If you're sitting in that information silo, get out of it. Just get out of it. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having us. I think it's a good or wonderful experience to be able to talk non-dental stuff also.
And I think this is the first time that the both of us are on like one show together. Yeah, so thank you for that opportunity.
No, it's been great. I think you're the only married couple, apart from every now and again when I drag my husband kicking and screaming to be on it. But it's really great. It's really great to hear both of your perspectives as well. And everyone's perspective is valuable. So, and like Joe said, I just enjoy the opportunity to talk about some of these things because I spend so much time reading about it, thinking about it, writing about it. So the chance for me to talk to other people and hear different perspectives is really valuable. So thank you. I appreciate it all this time. Yeah. And for everyone who's here, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to everyone who's been supporting the No Show, and wishing everyone a fantastic festive season.
Yep.
We will see you in the new year.
Yeah, not too cliche to say, I hope for world peace.
Yes, absolutely. Peace is what we need. All right, see you guys.